Hello, welcome to Undisputed Boxing with Ave and Rick. Today we are talking about two big welterweight clashes coming up. The first one I'm really pumped for, Terence Crawford versus Kell Brook. And Errol Spence makes his comeback after a long layoff against Danny Garcia. So this has kind of gone under the radar a little bit, I think, because from what I understand, Matchroom are not directly involved in this fight now, which actually I think is a little bit of a shame. Kell Brook has recently done a video with IFL where he's pretty scathing on Eddie Hearn and Matchroom and why they're not involved. And I can kind of see it from both sides, but I do kind of lean a little bit more towards Kell Brook in this situation. I can see why he feels a little bit hard done by, because I've been a big fan of Kell Brook from the 2011, 2012. He kind of breezed through the domestic scene. He had that kind of rough fight against Carson Jones, which I think he probably overlooked it a little bit, rematched it, got the job done. And then I think one is a little bit frustrating really, because it was a crucial kind of a sort of a fork in the road where he was going down the IBF route. And I think the idea was that Paulie Malignaggi was the champion at the time. So they were kind of pursuing the IBF route. But I do remember Kell Brook got offered the Timothy Bradley fight, who I think was the WBO champion at the time. And I just think that was a massive kind of miss from Matchroom and from Kell Brook, because I really think that Kell Brook had the beating of Timothy Bradley. He was kind of coming towards the end of his career, and I really think Kell Brook was slightly bigger. He had better feet, he had the better jab, and I really think that could have been the making of him. And I think beating Timothy Bradley in the US, that would have really kind of taken his career in a completely different direction to where it is now. I mean, it's all hindsight, and I'm not quite sure what kind of money that he would have been offered at the time. It probably wouldn't have been that great, because he wasn't a huge name at the time. But they were like, no, we're going to go down the IBF route. And then, of course, Sean Porter beats Paulie Malignaggi. Sean Porter is then the IBF champion. Kell Brook's mandated. They lose the purse bids. The fight's in LA. And Sean Porter was actually a favorite for that fight. And Kell Brook went over to LA and he really did a number on Sean Porter. I think it was, one of the most complete performances of a British fighter in the US. And Sean Porter, as I say, he was a favorite in that fight. And I don't know if you saw Sean Porter against Errol Spence, but Sean Porter gave Errol Spence like nightmares. Like he was a real problem for Errol Spence. And I think that was actually quite an interesting kind of measuring stick. I know that styles make fights, but Kell Brook actually had a more complete performance over Sean Porter than Errol Spence. And I think Errol Spence beat Sean Porter, but it was on a split decision. So, and then of course, Kell Brook becomes IBF champion. And then, as we all know, he was kind of victim of the IBF very strict mandatory challenges. And he had Jojo Dan, then he had Frankie Gavin. And then I think he had the stabbing incident and he came back, and then he had to fight Kevin Bizier, which is another, really poor opponent. And then they were negotiating for the Jesse Vargas unification, which I think would have been like a great fight for him to help unify the division. And then of course he helped Eddie Hearn get out of jail card, and he steps up to fight Golovkin and doesn't take the Jesse Vargas fight. And I just think he was grossly undersized against Golovkin. I mean, yeah, he had success, and I think in the first or second round for maybe about 30 seconds, but it was very, a peak Golovkin, and he pretty much just sort of walked through. So, yeah, and I guess the form book doesn't really favor Kell Brook in this fight, because I think in his last three fights since the Errol Spence fight, which you and I were at actually, Rabchenko, Zarafa, Mark DeLuca, all pretty average performances. But I do think that Kell Brook is the type of fighter that he would raise his game for the right opponent. And I actually think that Al Heyman and Top Rank and Crawford's team, I think they could be sleeping on Kell Brook. Actually, I think he's a real live opponent in this fight. What do you think? How do you see it going?
Just before I give you that thing on the fight, because there's two interesting things. It's the fight, but it is that understory of the Sky element.
Yeah.
Because seen that interview as well, and I was surprised he was going in on her, not as in he shouldn't do, just it's quite a big thing to do because they've been, you know, partners for a long time. It's tricky because not a bad time really, because there's three you know, heavyweight fights that are on pay-per-view, and I think that's where it's not got room. Along with potentially another pay-per-view from Tyson Fury, which isn't Sky, but still, you know, it's still testing the market. So it's tricky, really. And I saw what Kell Brook had to say, and the fact that actually it's probably, you know, it is a better quality fight, and it's for a lot of belts. And the I mean, how many belts has Crawford got? He got 2 of them. Is it just one in this way?
No, it's the WBO. I think it's the WBO, but I think his consensus, it's got to be number 2 pound for pound. I think Errol Spence has.
Yeah, it's pound for pound, and it has been undisputed in the weight lower. So it is
like welterweight, yeah.
In sense, it is in a boxing sense a bigger fight, but pay-per-view isn't about the quality of fight. Sometimes it's just about how it's marketed and what it is. And unfortunately, heavyweights sell. And Brook's not been around for a while. And no one really knows who Crawford is in the UK if you don't really follow boxing. And unfortunately, some of the factors that dictate a pay-per-view or not. And it's on at a silly time for the UK crowd. So you're only going to get a real big fight that's going to create interest on pay-per-view, and it's over the other side of the Atlantic. So I can see why Matchroom have said no to it. But again, then it does depend how much money they were willing to put forward. I think if Top Rank was saying it's either pay-per-view or you're not having it, then I can understand why Sky turned it down. But I would have liked to think that they offered rubbish money for it just to air it, but you don't know. But it's very hard to put that as a pay-per-view with everything else that's going on. So it's tricky. And it you know, Brook will see it as, oh, I've been let down and whatever. But you know, it will be funny though, because if Brook did win this, and I'm kind of with you in a sense that I think he's live in the fight, how much Eddie Hearn will just be straight back onto him, and suddenly it'll be giving him a hero's welcome, probably at Sheffield Airport, wherever he comes into, and suddenly, you know, Hearn will be bigging him up. I had noticed that Hearn had gone very quiet on Brook during the summer. I mean, it was hard, you know, the pandemic and all that, but still, he'd gone very quiet on him, and you know, never really spoke about him unless he was brought up. So I have heard a few things about, has Brook been up to kind of stuff this year that, you know, has annoyed Hearn, and I'm not quite sure what that is, but there's been some.
Well, apparently they haven't spoken since his last fight in, was it February, March time, which is quite strange because he was one of his kind of star boxers in his stable. So I think there is definitely more to it than meets the eye in terms of the relationship and what's been going on.
And again, I don't know if Dom Ingle, he's, you know, not training him anymore now. They say it's all friendly and all that, but you don't know. It's just suddenly 2 people that are quite big in Kell's life have almost, or career, have kind of taken us not out the picture, just a sidestep from him. So I don't know. No smoke that on that. But in terms of the fight, Crawford's the favourite. I think Crawford will win on points, but I think Brook is live in there. I think he's big. It'll be big at the weight. There's no, the big thing for him here is, I mean, I saw at the interview, he does look like he's the right level. He says he's been at the right weight for a long time. There's no, you know, morning weight. Is it the IBF? You've got to get to 10. You can't put on more than 10 pounds. I think that was always a bugger for Brook, that morning weight, where he can just come in the weigh and then put any weight on he wants before the fight. I think that'll help him. I do think it's not going to be the best Brook that we've seen, and I think it will need to be the best Brook to beat him. But you know, Crawford's still got some questions. You know, can he take a punch? He's not as fast anymore, Brook, but his timing has always been his big thing. So it's something I'll be definitely watching somehow, and be intrigued
I'm so
to.
pumped for this.
And even if he doesn't win, even if he doesn't win and puts on a really good performance and pushes him, then his stock will still probably rise, and he could still get some big fights off the end of it. And if he did win, then wow, I mean, probably a rematch clause, I'd have thought, because this is a voluntary. So, you know, and then if he did win and whatnot, but you'll see Hearn come back into his life, no doubt, and Khan will probably want to fight him then. But we'll see. I mean, do you lean towards Crawford, but hope Brook gets it?
I don't know. I'm just so conflicted. Like, I was really surprised. There's actually been a lot of backlash in the fight. A lot of people are kind of up in arms, going, "Why is Crawford even, bothering with Brook?" I just think they're crazy. I mean, just before I answer that, your point on pay-per-view, like Terence Crawford has only had 2 fights on pay-per-view. One was Victor Postol, which did 50,000, and the other one was Amir Khan, which was 150,000. And that was, a pretty disappointing fight. So you can kind of see why Sky have ignored it. But it would have been nice to see Eddie Hearn just show a little bit of loyalty and back his man. I think the fact that they haven't gone in with a big offer to land the fight, Eddie Hearn clearly doesn't, fancy him in that fight. Doesn't think he's going to do the job. And I just think I do think it's a bit of a shame. My head says Terence Crawford has this, and it's probably going to be a decision. But there is just something in me. It's probably, I think you could be guilty of this as well, kind of looking at a fight with kind of Union Jack tinted glasses and maybe thinking that, the Brit is maybe better than you think he is. But I would probably say Terence Crawford, a split decision, or maybe a decision, but Kell Brook, it really shows, his steel and his metal, because he's he can if the fight gets rough, he can get physical as well, and I think he'll be bigger. He has a bigger frame than Terence Crawford, and he's very good on the inside. So I think he'll give a very good account of himself, and I think his stock will rise from it. I'll be very surprised if the fact that he's probably available now, Bob Arum probably will have an option on him for his next fight. Might slip something like that into his contract. But I actually think the move for him, if he puts on a really good performance, he moves across to PBC. I think staying with Eddie Hearn in Matchroom is maybe not the best move for him anyway, because all the big fights are at PBC for welterweight.
You mean Top Rank?
No, Top Rank is Terence Crawford, but PBC is where Keith Thurman, Errol Spence, Danny Garcia, Sean Porter, they're all with PBC.
All right. Do you not think, like you said, you not think he'll have an option on him, and he'll go to Top Rank? He'll do a contract with Top Rank if he wins.
Most probably. I mean, you'd think so, because he's going to be a free agent now, I would think. So it's very possible that would happen. But maybe Al Heyman's maybe talking to him now, saying, "Look, if you put in a good performance, you can jump ship, and we'll sign you for a 3-fight deal or something like that." And I actually don't think that'd be a bad move for him, to be honest. I mean, it would be a shame to see.
And he could still end up on Sky anyway.
Yeah,
still end up on Sky anyway, because if he fights, I mean, I think he'd have to do a Crawford rematch, but then, so I think he's going to have to beat Crawford twice to kind of fight anyone else as champion. But then, he could fight, some of those, or it could be a Pacquiao fight under Top Rank. Actually, no, Pacquiao's not with Top Rank anymore, isn't he?
He's not. He's independent. He's independent now.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, yeah. But yeah, that's how I see it going. But
and if he's fighting in America,
actually, I'm gonna change my prediction just to mix it up a little bit. I'm gonna go Kell Brook, split decision, and then rematch next year. Yeah, Kell Brook. Come on, Kell. Okay, so that's that one done. The next fight is Errol Spence versus Danny Garcia. So Errol Spence has been at the ring for, is it over a year?
Yeah, I think quite a bit over a year. When was the accident? The accident was before the pandemic.
Yeah, it was last year. I think it was last summer. Let me just double check. But yeah, how do you see the fight going? What's your prediction?
It's so hard with this because I don't know. It's rare that you predict a fight like this where someone's been in a pretty bad accident and you don't know if they'll be the same. I mean, there's one thing taking a bad beat fight and wondering if they're going to be the same. There's another thing having a car accident. God knows how fast he was going, and I think he wasn't wearing a seatbelt. He was ejected through the front window or something like that, wasn't he?
Yeah. It was end of September.
So hard.
It was the accident, so it's over a year.
The what? Sorry, the accident was in September.
No, sorry. His last fight, it was against Danny Garcia. Sorry, his last fight was against Sean Porter. That was 28th of September.
Yeah. That was the one at the Dallas Cowboys Stadium, wasn't it? I think. And yeah. I think the accident was probably about a month later.
Yeah.
Pretty sure it's gone a bit of a, he doesn't live the life, does he, Spence, particularly? He balloons a little bit, and I think he won't get away with that forever. But in terms of this fight, I mean, it's hard. I'm going to go into it saying that Spence is not affected by the car crash. Big question mark.
Yeah.
But if that's the case, I think he deals with him quite comfortably.
Really?
I'm not sure if it's stoppage, but I think he deals with him. I think he's kind of far superior. Garcia is good, but when he's ever stepped up to kind of the top level, he's been beaten.
Yeah.
And I think he needs. I think he's got Khan on his record, but I've never been oversold on Khan, and I think Khan fought the wrong fight. I think as soon as you try and get into a bit of a war, with someone like Garcia, that's kind of the best thing. And Spence will attack him, but he's quite rangy as well, Spence, and he can take a punch as well. And he's someone who starts and just builds up and grinds people down. And question mark, like I said, about the car accident, will that affect him? But I've got to just say, well, in my prediction, I'm saying it won't, and I think it's a comfortable points win.
Yeah.
How are you seeing that?
I don't know. Did you see Garcia versus Sean Porter? I watched that this week actually. It's a hell of a fight.
Yeah.
And there wasn't that much in it. And the good thing with Danny Garcia, he puts combinations together really well. He puts threes and fours together. He's got great feet. He's great on the inside, and he has a vicious left hook. That left hook to the body, left hook. I just think that he actually gives Errol Spence some problems here. I think if Errol Spence hasn't trained hard for this and he isn't prepared, then he's in for a long night. And but yeah, I think Spence will be the favourite, quite rightly so. I think it's a unanimous points decision for Spence. And then, they've obviously got to start looking at the Crawford Brook winner. I mean, everybody's crying out for the Spence Crawford. And I think that's probably why there's a little bit of disappointment with Crawford and Spence's respective opponents, is because everybody's really crying out for that fight, which I just don't know if I can see it getting made, because it's PBC against Top Rank again. But maybe that's what they're planning for next year. But I think Errol Spence, a unanimous points decision. Yeah.
Is that on pay-per-view in the States?
Good question.
Because Spence is probably the only American that is pretty good with pay-per-view at the moment. I'm sure he's done some of his last few fights. I mean, he got about 40,000, 50,000. Yeah, so it is in the Kell Brook Stadium.
It's pay-per-view on Fox, and it's at the AT&T Stadium in Texas. So that's going to be in front of a crowd. Then they're going to have a crowd for that.
Yeah.
Well, it's in a stadium, so unless it's empty.
American at the moment that's doing solid numbers and consistent. So yeah. And Top Rank probably want in on that with Crawford. Yeah. I mean, I don't quite know enough about it, but usually one side is the one that's pulling it down.
Yeah.
Don't know. Bit interesting one though. I mean, I think Spence is too big for Crawford.
Yeah. I think there is talk of Errol Spence will have to eventually start stepping up to light middleweight soon, because he's enormous for the weight. That was the other thing, going back to the whole Kell Brook Eddie Hearn thing, because Eddie Hearn was quite vocal about Kell Brook needs to step up to 154, and I think that's part of the reason why they haven't, they've maybe, they've relationship is a little bit fractured because there's always talk that Kell Brook is just too big for 147. He has to kill himself to get down to 147. But do you remember the weigh-in against Errol Spence? Like Errol Spence is a little bit taller than Kell Brook, and yeah, I don't know. It's a bit strange how there was always talk of that, but there's never been talk about Errol Spence being too big for 147. He makes the weight. Sean Porter the same. Sean Porter's not as tall, but he's a really thick. He's quite broad. But another thing as well on Kell Brook is he's 5-1 outside, and I think there's actually a lot of value in that if we're talking odds or betting.
Yeah, I didn't know it was that big.
Yeah,
didn't know it was that big.
Yeah, Terence Crawford.
And I don't know as well. There's just a lot of upsets in the air in boxing at the moment. There's a lot of upsets in the air with last week and no crowds and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Who knows? I mean, I don't blame Brook for taking it. I'm assuming he's getting paid quite well anyway. And, it's one of those where it's a no-brainer, really. Get some decent money. Even if I lose and put in a good performance, my stock will probably rise. I think that what will kind of come of it.
Yeah, I don't know. A lot of people are looking at
a
bit of a money grab. I don't think it is a money grab because it could wait until next year until crowds. He'll probably get paid like another 30 or 40% more. So I don't think he's cashing out. I really think he's so focused on this. He's definitely saying all the right things, and he's got.
I don't see it as a cash out. I don't see it as a cash out. I see it as a tactical move, though. I think, it's kind of. I mean, boxers have to be a bit deluded anyway. They always think they're going to win and everything. I think you have to go into it a bit like that. But I think he'll know it's probably one of the toughest opponents he's been in with, though he has been in with some quite tough opponents if you think about it. But and potentially that's probably why he's not overawed by it. He's been in with the Golovkin, for Christ's sake, like you said earlier.
Yeah.
And just wasn't big enough. But with this, it's a different ball. So I don't think it's a pure cash out, but I do think, he wouldn't have done it for cheap, put it that way, because he knows there's a risk of losing. But I think that he knows there's a big upside that if he gets beat on points and it's close, and he gives him some scary moments and even puts him down, his stock's quite big. And in a way, he'll probably want to go and just go, I'll do better than Khan, because that was a funny ending, wasn't it? One which so I thought strange. I think Khan took the easy way out.
Such a strange fight. Yeah, it's almost like indirectly he is fighting Khan, isn't it? Just to sort of see how he does against Crawford.
Yeah.
All right.
Did you want to touch on some other news?
All right. Yeah. How long have we done?
We have done 23 minutes.
All right. Let's do another 5 minutes. Yeah. You want to talk about Tyson Fury?
Really professional of us, isn't it? This. It's got a stopwatch. We'll progress.
If we're gonna make it any better, we're gonna have to do something about your background. When are we just gonna be doing this with your kitchen in the background?
Yeah, why not? I might be moving home once soon, so yeah, new kitchen.
All right. So where Tyson Fury? Well, there's not really much to discuss yet, is there? They've not announced his opponent yet, have they?
No, but there's been some. I mean, one, it's the fight. Obviously the Wilder fight's not happening. But it's it's meant to be in London, 5th of December. Bit of the undercard coming out. Honland's meant to be on it. Just rumours of people. I mean, it went from dog shit to moderate, I suppose, in terms of the opponents that I've heard. The latest one is Takam. He seems to be in the front run. The front runner, but as far as I'm aware, he's not even in the top 15 of WBC, but then the WBC will just magically put him there anyway, so it's semi-irrelevant, I suppose.
Well, there's lots of factors that they can, they could just put the pressure on the WBC and just say, look, this is the best opponent we could get. I think they've got to approve it from what I understand. It'd be very difficult for them to get somebody.
Who would you like to see that's realistic?
I would like to see that's realistic. Michael Hunter, I think would be. I would accept that. but I can't see him take, like, Tyson Fury has a history of, picking, pretty, poor opposition. If it's up to him,
It's pay-per-view here as well. It's meant to be pay-per-view here.
Really?
Warren said, because he just said, "Oh, heavyweight champion fights. It's got to be pay-per-view." But okay, it depends who he's fighting.
Well, if that's the case, then they've got to go for somebody big. I don't think they're going to accept a Tom Schwartz or a Otto Wallin. It's going to have to be a name, somebody that they've heard of. I don't know. I just don't know who they can get at such short notice. I think the only one I'd like to see that is respectable, that's in the top 10, 15 is Michael Hunter. But I just can't see that happening. History tells me it's going to be somebody that we've not heard of. That'll be top 50, top 60, maybe at a push. And, Fury will put on a show.
I can't see it being that bad. I can't see it being that bad, not on pay-per-view. They can't dish out an Otto Wallin and them lot, one of them that's like out of the blue. This is pay-per-view, for Christ's sake. Those ones weren't.
Is it confirmed as pay-per-view then?
Well, it's not confirmed, but in an interview, Warren said it will be pay-per-view because it's the heavyweight champion fighting. That's fair enough, but then you put him against me, it's not suddenly pay-per-view, so it's got to be half decent. And you got to think who they can build him up. I mean, Takam's like, okay, but he's been beaten by Joshua, he's been beaten by like Chisora. That took a lot off him. Hunter's not well known, but I agree with you. That'd be a great one. Rivas, you could argue because he doesn't speak English very well, but it's like he put Dillian White down and had a war with Dillian White, and there's a bit on that. So I think Rivas is probably something you could get away with. I mean, there's some great names in that WBC that I'd like to see happen, but I just don't think it will. I mean, Ortiz, they might, you could probably sell that. Ruiz would be the best one, but that won't be happening. But that would be the one I'd want to see.
You could sell that,
and that would definitely be. But yeah, it's a tricky one. I mean, if they have boxed themselves into a corner at having to be pay-per-view, then they've made it tough. And it's not just that. They're going to be, there's other pay-per-views around them. I mean, Joshua's the week after. You know what I mean? If they want to make money out of this, they've got to throw a name in there. I mean, Charles Martin was another one I heard.
Yeah.
The difference with Charles Martin is he's a name and because of the Joshua fight, ex-world champion, so they could throw that in. It's just Joshua blew him out in like 5 minutes. So
yeah,
if Fury just went to points, would that, or would he even care if the people making comparisons? I'm not sure.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be good to see him in action. I can't see, if you look at, history tells you he always he's very risk averse when it comes to fights. And I think that's why I've always liked, Dillian White, he takes on the big opposition, he took on Joseph Parker, he took on, Carlos Takam was, Joseph Parker and, Derek Chisora twice, didn't have to really, take those, but he took them and went to war. Whereas Tyson Fury, even leading up to the Klitschko fight, the opposition that he was facing wasn't great. I think Christian Hammer was his last fight before Klitschko. Christian Hammer or Steve Cunningham, one or the other. But I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Just before we finish this, there's been some the Chisora Usyk taking a hammer in over here. Just so everyone knows, I'm in the UK and Ava is in Singapore at the moment, but is moving back to the UK. But it's been taking an absolute hammering because it is a pretty piss poor pay-per-view card.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean I said this in our last video. I didn't really subscribe to it being a pay-per-view fight, to be honest. But
yeah, I was hoping a few more were going to land, but it's probably got worse because Hammer's pulled out of the what's his name fight?
Dave Allen.
Dave Allen. So he's got some. I can't
Is
even
that
remember
chief
his
support?
name now. I was going to. No, Selby's chief support.
Oh, okay.
Selby. Yeah, but it's thingy because normally like the matchroom undercards, even if it's not always quality all the way through, there's intrigue and there's just characters in there. Like there's always a price against someone, or do you know what I mean? They always manage just to pull enough intrigue out of. Because I think for a pay-per-view card, you've got to have the main event's got to be pay-per-view. And I do think Chisora and Usyk is, but then you usually have a really good, number 2 fight under, and then some intriguey ones, and a price thrown in there against someone's always.
I'll tell you what, there you go. That's who I fancy. Pricey, throw Pricey in with Tyson Fury. That's pay-per-view. And Pricey, he'd be a threat for the first 2 or 3 rounds. And I think he beat Tyson Fury in the amateurs. David Price.
Yeah, that actually. I think the Americans would hate this, but us Brits would. Because also there's a thing in you that always wants to see Price do well as well, isn't there? Because he's a nice guy. There's part of you that wants to see Price do well, and that's almost thingy. But you're right. There's a right hand there.
Like back in the day, I think it would have been around about like when because Fury and Pricey, they were kind of going through the domestic scene at a similar level, but I think Pricey was making more noise at domestic level because he was knocking people out, and Fury was kind of more of a fan favorite with the hardcore fans. And
Fury was getting chinned in his Commonwealth fight around then, so that's why it was. Because he had some really bad fights as well. Like Fury had some really terrible, not great fights to watch. Like John McDermott, and a lot of people think John McDermott actually won that fight. And I think it was Fury that was the British champion. And then instead of defending it against David Price, he vacated. And that's where I kind of turned off a little bit with Fury for that reason, because I thought that would have been a very good fight. And Pricey was kind of walking through people and knocking them out. But then, of course, he hit Tony Thompson, and then that was it. His career was pretty much over. Well, I mean, let's be honest. Fury was deemed as bang average until that Klitschko performance. He came back and he was deemed as bang average again until the Wilder fight. Yeah. Even the first Wilder fight, because the way he got up. But he's had 2 awesome performances, Fury, and the rest have been average. You could say that one of the Chisora fights. Have they fought twice? They've fought twice, haven't they? Not
twice,
3 times.
Yeah. Twice. And again, they were not great fights.
No, but the second fight was, he did show his boxing class there. Yeah, that was a good. But he's just had average performances. Some poor, like I said, the McDermott ones, and I can't remember the guy who floored him, but someone in the Commonwealth fight he had. And he's he's seen as the best in the world because of 2 performances. And to be fair, that's sometimes all you need.
Yeah.
You can't say he's consistent. You see the trouble that one's got him in. So they've got to be careful with Fury and who they put him against, because I think he's got to be up for the fight. And if he doesn't see danger will find him.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a tricky one.
We'll see. Well, time will tell.
Okay. All right. What's next week's topics?
Let's wrap it up. Yeah. So we're going to try and do. So next week, why don't we do the other heavyweights? Joyce, Dubois, AJ Pulev. Next week. So we're going to try and do 1 video a week. If you like it, please like and subscribe. Leave some comments in the comment section. We'll try and answer any questions. All right. I'll see you next week.
See you later.